As the opening frames suggest to you, these talks are meant to be more of a meditation, more of a time of sitting beside still waters and looking to have a little bit of us kind of restored. It comes from the 23rd Psalm, "The Lord is my shepherd." Over the last little bit, we've been talking about the journey of faith and how we travel through the discovery of what faith is, and it's taking into comparison the construction of Christendom and separating out faith, our faith, your faith, my faith, the faith that God would help us to discover about who He is and what that means for us. And I've chosen to look at the book of Genesis, Abraham specifically. For Abraham, according to Hebrews chapter 11, talks that the writer there of Hebrews talks that by faith Abraham did this, by faith Abraham did that at certain stages of his life. One of the interesting things in the discovery of faith for Abraham was what came before Abraham, and that was his father, and what came in his father's life. And last week we touched on it, but it comes from Genesis chapter 11. And there it talks about Abraham's father, whose name was Terah. And Terah took Abram and took Sarah, Abram's wife, and some of the other family members, and off they went to the land of Canaan. Now, there's an interesting verse here in the last part of Genesis chapter 11, and it says that but that word "but" is kind of a hinge swing word. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. When they came to Haran, they settled there. And I've often pondered that. I've often wondered what that meant, and I've often wondered, did that mean that he settled for that much of the journey, and that's kind of as far as what he was going to go, and he had it in his mind that he was going to get to that fair and blessed Canaan land. He got almost to it, and then settled there. Maybe it was just a short stop. Maybe it was a time that they were going to just rest for a while, but it turned out to be a long time, and he died there. After he died, Abram continued on the journey. After he died, Abram took up the challenge of getting into Canaan land. After he died, God spoke to Abram, said, "Abraham, come on the journey, and I'll show you the land I've promised to your family." I was thinking of this. I was part of a prayer gathering this week. It was a virtual Zoom prayer gathering. And we went through a number of exercises. One of the exercises that we did was that we would spend time in silence in God's presence, in prayer. Not saying anything, keeping our minds clear and just listening for what we may hear God to say or to call us to or to do. And so this was a 30-minute event of silence. And as we were doing this, I was stirred up. In my heart, there was a lot of things going on, and I live a very, very busy life, and there's always a lot of things that take up space in my head, and situations and things that I have to deal with. And so it's hard for me sometimes to settle down. But as I went on this journey of silence, about 15 minutes into it, I began to feel peace, and I began to feel a moving of God, and I began to feel better and stronger, and I felt a great sense finally of relief. And so at about the 15 to 20 minute mark in this, it was kind of like, okay, now I'm done. Now I can get going. Now I can get back on track. Now I can go and do and be. And then all of a sudden God said basically to me these words. He said, "Hold on, Mark. Is that all you want? Is that all you want?" I'm prepared to show you deeper things. I'm prepared to show you more. Are you about to settle for 20 minutes? I thought to myself, no, I don't want to settle for anything. I want to keep going. I want to see what God has fully in store. It put me in mind of Terah. He settled for almost being there. He settled, and maybe from where he settled, he could kind of look over the hill and see into the promised land. Maybe where he settled, maybe he built a house and he said, this is enough for me. I just want to be able to see from the hill down into the promised land. I don't know. But I do know that in the discovery of faith, I don't want to settle for just a little bit. I want all that God has for me. I want to discover that for everything that God is willing to show me or to bring me in the action, in the work, in the ability of faith, of believing, of moving along in this discovery of faith. We're all different in this journey. I don't want to assume that you want to be like me, or nor should you assume that I want to be who my father was, or who my grandfather was, or anything. We're all different. I'm mindful of the story of old Joe. And probably you've heard variations of this, and this is my story of old Joe. But old Joe was a gentleman in the church, and old Joe couldn't carry a tune in the bucket. You know who I'm talking about. And old Joe would sit on the very front pew of the church, and he so wanted to sing in the choir, but he just couldn't do it. And so old Joe, for a number of years, as he grew older and older, he sat in the front pew and he tapped his toe, or he kind of clapped his hands. But old Joe kept up the beats the whole time. And the choir, unconsciously, they began to understand that old Joe, he could keep the beat. And so there he sat. Until one day old Joe was gone. He passed away in his sleep, very quietly and gently, a gentle smile on his face. He went off to meet the Master, face to face. Well, at his funeral, the choir got up to sing, and they all looked down to where old Joe used to sit, right here. And his seat was empty. Someone had placed a little wreath with some beautiful flowers to represent old Joe. And the choir began to sing his favorite song. But something was off. And as they sang, they couldn't quite all get together, and some were going faster than others, and others slower, and some began to sob and to weep. And then it struck them, the choir director. He recognized the absence of old Joe. You see, each of us have a place in the kingdom of God that's different from anyone else. And as faith is revealed to us in our journey, it's revealed to us in a different way. And I want to encourage you this afternoon, sitting beside the still waters, to give this some thought in the discovery of your faith. Where do you fit? What's your place? For some of us, it is just to keep the beat. For some of us, it is just to be old Joe. For some of us, it is to stand in front of people and to speak about the deep things of God. For some of us, it is to be the hands and the mouth, the eyes and the ears of God. Jesus, in a demonstration of the revelation of faith, in about John chapter 14, he says, the things that I do not do on my own, but they are the Father doing his work through me. You see, in our discovery of faith, just like old Joe, he came to realize and to understand that what he was doing was the natural outpouring of faith. He wanted to worship God. He had the experience of God. And so what happened was, it was a natural outpouring of faith. So as we sit beside the still waters, let your soul be restored. Let it be restored in thinking on the wondrous call that God has put into your life for you just to be you. The picture behind me was painted by a friend of mine. It's from King's Landing in New Brunswick. I think quite often of King's Landing, similar to this of Terah, Abram's father, who put down roots and didn't go any farther up the river of faith, didn't do any more exploring, but thought to himself, this is pretty good what I have right now. And maybe he thought that this is the most of the journey is done right now. But he didn't realize, those settlers on King's Landing didn't realize, perhaps, all the rest of Canada was yet unexplored. From the vastness of the mountains, the prairies, the Canadian Shield through Ontario, Niagara Falls, the Great St. Lawrence, all of that was left undiscovered, unknown. But this perhaps was enough. As we sit beside the still waters, as God restores our soul, keep this in mind. The vastness of his love for you, the things that he has prepared for you are amazing and fantastic. Take strength, take joy, receive peace in knowing God's rich plan for you is not yet done. Lord, restore our soul as we sit beside the still waters of faith. I'm Pastor Mark Collins. I pray God's richest blessings on you today. May God keep you, surround you with his protection. May he give you his peace so that you might give to others the peace that has been entrusted to you. Thanks for joining us. May God bless you.